happened in the Raiders receiver room this week?
A lot happened in the Raiders receiver room this week. First of all, Jakobi Meyers wants a contract extension and requested a trade, which, damn, that is coming pretty late in the game. Of course, I will talk about it. I don't expect the Raiders to trade him, but I also understand where Jakobi Meyers is coming from. Jakobi Meyers is making $11 million a year right now. He's in the Tutu Atwell, Darius Slayton zone. He's sandwiched between those guys in APY. And let me just say, we can argue and debate about where Jakobi Meyers ranks among league-wide receivers. It's higher than Darius Slayton, Tutu Atwell, and De'Ami Brown. Hey, we can throw this guy out on the field and it's not embarrassing as our third, fourth receiver type candidate. Jakobi Meyers is much better than that, coming off one of the best seasons of his career. So I understand, of course, just the complications there. We'll get into all that. Then, honestly, the more surprising thing was Amari Cooper signs a 1-year deal. At the end of August. Nate, there has been a shocking lack of buzz about Amari Cooper. Well, maybe not so shocking, but a real shocking lack of buzz. And then he signs with his former team where you guys worked together there in, it was Oakland at that point, right?
It was Oakland, but yes, Vegas. We were.
Yeah, it was Oakland. So you guys were together with the Raiders. He's now back. So a lot has happened in this wide receiver room that already had people interested just because the passing game in this offense is pretty fascinating.
How many different head coaches have the Raiders had since Amari was last there? Because Gruden traded him away, and then they got what's his face, Rich, the special teams coach, and then
Bisaccia, Bisaccia, Josh McDaniels, and Antonio Pierce, and obviously now we got Pete Carroll. So that's four guys
since he's last been there. It hasn't been that long, but it has. No, I think when we'll just start with talking about this offense, and we know that the Chip Kelly led the highest paid coordinator in NFL history. I just have to keep adding this. This is a new Raiders. That's why they signed Pete Carroll. They got Tom Brady, if you don't know. Tom Brady, who can visit practices now, by the way, for part of his Fox deal. But this is what they were going for. But when we looked at this offense, we kept kind of going, who's playing receiver? Where's Jakobi lining up? Okay, who's opposite Jakobi? It was just kind of looking at the receiver room. They're only carrying 5 at this point in time, and that's with adding Amari Cooper. So it's not like a deep receiving room. It's interesting with Jakobi Meyers and Jack Bech that they drafted, Deontay Thornton. They seem to really want to get going at receiver, but how do you even see that shaking out? Because Jakobi absolutely needs a pay raise. He's not getting $30 million, I think his agent's asking, but he deserves to get more than Allen Lazard in the year 2025. Jakobi to me is can be part of your top 3 pass catchers. If you have a nice receiver room or a tight end or something. This team is just so funky that their 2 best offensive weapons are a tight end and a running back potentially. And it's Chip Kelly who's going to hybridize a lot of their offense and use, I think, a lot of tight ends. And I will talk about Michael Mayer a little later on top of Brock Bowers. So the receiver room is always just auxiliary to me in this offense, whether that's fair or not, because I think a lot of the concepts Chip Kelly likes to run attacks the middle. And if you notice, even this preseason, when Geno throws to the outside, what are the routes? Goes. It's just very vertical on the outside. And so that's why I think that I'm curious how Amari Cooper fits, because where do you think Cooper fits best? I know we've talked about flanker. Is it slot? Is it true on-ball X? I've kind of shifted opinions every year on it, basically what I see. But and I think Jakobi Meyers is actually best as almost a power slot, but he can bump out outside too. But if you're in 2 tight end looks, they both have to be, I don't know. It's just not circling into the circle part, into the round hole as much as I want. There's a little squareness to this. Do you agree with the receiver room and how that shakes out?
Well, we absolutely have to get alignment bro dork level stuff with this Raiders wide receiver room, because that is the big reason. That's the big reason that Dante Thornton has been playing so much as the round 4 rookie receiver, and Jack Bech as the round 2 rookie receiver has been running almost exclusively as a backup. And this was a signal to me right away when Thornton got drafted, because I remember when they drafted Jack Bech, I'm like, man, that's a little interesting, because I think Bech, while he was a perimeter and a one side of the field wide receiver for TCU last year, I always talk about this. These guys that take over 70% of their snaps at one outside receiver position among the prospects I've charted over the last few years, those guys are almost all the first round players outside of Drake London, who's just like a different dude. The mid like first round guys and second round, it's all like the busts of the busts. The rest of the guys are kind of like the Cedric Tillmans. You know, they're going to take a season to come along. So again, despite him being that type of player, Jack Bech, I thought he fit best as kind of like a big slot move around guy. But that is who Jakobi Meyers is, which is I think part of the reason that they're not interested in giving Jakobi Meyers as an extension. In addition to the fact that he's an addition from the old regime, he's also, I think that Jack Bech is like his replacement in 2026, and it gives them a little more. I like Jakobi Meyers. He's actually similar to I have said for a while that Jalen Coker, which by the way, happy Jalen Coker Day to you, Nate Tice. You're glad that I even took a break from the constant partying I've been doing today with Adam Thielen moved out of town to even join you on this podcast. Okay, so let me just, you are welcome for that. But I thought that Jalen Coker kind of reminded me a little bit of Jakobi Meyers, because there are these guys that can beat man coverage, but they're probably best from the slot, crafty players that can win over the middle of the field.
Strong.
But I think Bech gives but I think Bech probably gives you a little more oomph in like the blocking game and stuff like that than maybe Meyers does. So, but again, to bring this back to Thornton, when he was drafted in the 4th round, I was like, oh, he actually stands out in this receiver like kind of grouping here, because he's an X receiver. He flashed a little bit against man coverage in college, but I still thought he would be a developmental guy that needed a lot of seasoning, but he's gotten on the field because he's like basically their only X receiver candidate, which brings us to Amari Cooper, who had, I think, the best seasons of his NFL career with the Browns in 22 and 23 as their X receiver. Over 70% success rate versus man and press in back-to-back seasons those 2 years with the Browns. But last year, I mean, just completely falls off the cliff. He goes to like 61% against man and press. Like, he was not able to really, he did not threaten vertically at all, which is where Thornton, I think, is best. He ran his most commonly run route that I charted was a 9 route, and it was by far his worst route. Like, he gained no separation, no ability to like stack and go with. It's certainly not his game. It's never really been his game. It's certainly not his game now. I still think he can be good on these like post routes, dig routes, slant routes, like kind of the in-breaking stuff. So maybe that does mean he's more of a movement Z for this team and pushes Tre Tucker to the bench. So I think right now, if I had to guess, in 11 personnel, they'll probably line up Thornton at X, Cooper at flanker, and Meyers in the slot. But I also think, Nate, they're not going to be in 11 personnel very often. I think they'll be in like they've been a pure 11 personnel team in the preseason, and I would be stunned if that's anything more than just Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll being completely vanilla and not showing their hand.
I agree. Yes, tapping the nose, Principal Skinner. Yeah, I totally agree with this, because I think that's what they're going to base out of. I think they'll use that on 3rd down, because Bowers is a slot too. Like basically one of the best interior receiving weapons in the league. He can be a slot. He can be off tight end. He can do some on-ball stuff as well. He can split outside. He dunked on a DB on the outside this past week or this past month. So I agree with you. And I also am high on Mayer. I'll save him for a later section. But Michael Mayer, their tight end from a couple of years ago, who in a great tight end class was the consensus tight end 1. I got to remind people that he was my tight end 1. He was Dane Brugler, who I worked with the Athletics tight end 1. Just about everybody. You had some people that, had some Dalton Kincaids in there. And then other tight ends from that class have kind of overshadowed them. Sam Laporta, of course, had a great rookie year. Tucker Kraft is part of that class. Brent Strange is part of that class. But Mayer was the guy. And I think he looks, again, like that guy. And it could be the best tight end duo if it projects that way. And so get him on the field. And then they got Chip Kelly, who will. So that's why the Amari Cooper thing is interesting to me, because Amari, I thought, has always been best on the move or when he gets to break on a route, and not break early on a route. So we're getting specific here. But this is why I always thought in Dallas, I liked how they used him. But okay, we'll get you on over routes. We get you on digs. We get you on that stuff. Again, this is anecdotal for me, but it's like, I always just thought where he got some space to set guys up and then break off of them, that's where his greatest strengths were. I always thought he was bad vertically, because I don't think he's a ball winner type. I don't think that's just his strength of his game. Even if he's a bigger dude, he's got some strength to him. I think you want him moving. I've always thought the Chiefs were the perfect fit for him. But it's just, you just want stuff moving for him. So that's why I just didn't think it's the perfect fit for this offense. But the Raiders need a guy. They need a body like this. So it's kind of, all right, what's the best we can do? But I agree with you that Thornton is the best fit for being an outside receiver for his skill set. Even if he's not a perfect, well-rounded guy, he fits for what they need on the outside. I do want to share some Tre Tucker stats, and no one cares about this, probably but me. So
I care. I think fun. I'm going to care.
Yeah. So Tre Tucker might fit in this offense. He might not, but there's one thing that Tre Tucker is he's the fastest player in the NFL, the fastest player. So among players last year, all players, all positions, right. Tre Tucker, he had the fastest average speed in the NFL amongst anybody, receiver, DB, anybody, including special teams, including any plays. He had the highest rate of plays reaching 15 miles an hour or more. 40% of the plays that Tre Tucker was on the field. Yes, he is a gunner sometimes too, or was, I believe. 40% of the plays, he was reaching 15 miles an hour or more. That's like the good speed. 13.42 was his fastest. It was his average. Second, Jameson Williams. But this is actually why I wanted to lead into this, because we got some names when I started looking up average speeds that I think you'd be really interested in, Matt Harmon. Second is Jameson Williams. Third, Calvin Ridley. Fourth, Darius Slayton, which was the one that
makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fifth, Tyreek Hill, which makes sense. He has dropped off greatly. I could talk about that at a later time. I finally found the stats. Sixth, Garrett Wilson. Seventh, Cortland Sutton. Makes sense. Vertical X. Eighth, the eighth fastest average speed, according to Next Gen Stats in the entire NFL, Marvin Harrison Jr. He was sixth in plays, reaching 15 miles an hour or more. I did this whole segment to get to Marvin Harrison Jr. is fast. Ninth, Roman Dunze. Ninth is Roman Dunze.
Let's go.
So, yes, I had to bring this up. 10th is Amon-Ra St. Brown. So had to bring this up. Yes, Marvin Harrison Jr., eighth in average speed, according to Next Gen Stats. But thought that was super, super interesting. He's a burner. He's an interesting guy. And Chip Kelly likes speed. If you remember his old Oregon teams, everybody ran a freaking 4-3 on those teams. So he gets one little scat back guy that I'm sure he's going to do some interesting stuff, because he's literally the fastest player in the NFL. I'm sorry for swearing right there. I just got really excited about it.
No. It had to be done. You should not apologize. That was a deserved swear. And that's got to be. I mean, I'm just looking at guys that I have that I've charted at like over 19% go route percentage last year. Calvin Ridley, Garrett Wilson, Cortland Sutton are all among those guys. So there's, and I feel I didn't chart Darius Slayton, but I feel like that's got to be up there.
A lot of goes
Harrison
there.
At one point was running a bunch of goes, but they cut that back as the year went on. So there's definitely like a correlation. But that's another reason why I thought, like, even though Tre Tucker, in my personal opinion, probably not a needle moving player. Again, why he was on the field a bunch as ahead of Bech, because he's a speed guy. Just we're trying to clear stuff out for these two tight ends for the run game. I think that's what a lot of these guys are going to do. Even Thornton, who I do think is an interesting player, but he's probably like, you're hoping he's MVS with better hands. And I know that sounds like, oh my God, MVS, but like if MVS could catch, we would have had some really nice moments in the NFL. That's kind of what you're hoping Thornton could be. But yeah, I know I'm glad you brought up some of the Amari Cooper stuff, because I used to get so much crap for saying he was really overrated as a route runner. But I think he just I'm
with you.
It's more about like you get him on that break and crack it in. Same with Jerry Jeudy, honestly. I know they both went to Alabama, but they do all like the flashy footwork nonsense that looks good on TikTok, but it's like you want them which is what the Browns do really well. And I think that they might do this well with Cooper here. You want him, pushing vertical and then snap it. Yep. And like, I think that's when he creates a lot of space. So I don't know. I don't really know how good do you think this Raiders offense is going to be? We talked about this on the fantasy show. I think I'm still
fun and interesting than outright good. Yeah. They got a real quarterback. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Geno Smith, who is a real quarterback, top half quarterback. I think the O-line has looked good this preseason. But that is, to me, I am not assessing this offensive line. I don't want to be on record about it until we get going, because I have no idea how it's going to shake out. They moved Jackson Powers Johnson, all that. And it's just one of these things where Chip Kelly's offenses had some limitations on third down. Had some limitations where, maybe they didn't have the next wrinkle if defenses caught on, like they couldn't adjust as well. But the hope is this is probably the best quarterback that's maybe been in this offensive system, in Geno. So maybe they have some more real quarterback play, some true drop back stuff on third down. So to me, it's more fun and interesting than outright good. Like I wouldn't be shocked if they finish in the middle of the league, of 12, 14, 16, somewhere that. But I think that's also the ceiling. I don't see it ending up being top 10. I mean, they did draft Ashton Genty, who we haven't mentioned either, who's super exciting, looks the part. Please go down in the preseason. I appreciate the competitiveness, but please go down. But Ashton Genty looks the part as well. They got an interesting offensive coordinator, but it's just they need one more offseason, I think, to really get what they want to get. Like, I think they need another lineman. I think they need another receiver that fits the offense. I will say the Jack Bech thing has always just been in the back of my mind because that's a Chip Kelly receiver in my head. Horizontal guy, can block. He had Jake Bobo at UCLA, and that's the guy that I keep thinking back because he used him as like a hybrid tight end receiver. Same body type and everything. Not just saying that because they're both white, but just saying that they're built the same, they play the same. So that's always been in my head. Like, okay, maybe he uses them like that, where he's a receiver, but he does a lot of tight end duties. What's his face from the Bengals is like that too. Ivashish. I always bring the Greek.
Shabazz.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, enough on the Raiders offense, but it's interesting. It's one of the most interesting units, I think, in the NFL. There's a lot. It can go to a lot of different directions. They have a lot of interesting parts. How it comes together is probably one of the more fascinating subplots, I think, on Football 301, I'll say. I wouldn't say nationally, but Football 301. All right, let's move on to the defense, who returned Patrick Graham. Patrick Graham has now, I think, earned the reputation of can make lemonade out of lemons. He can just kind of get the most out of nothing. Last year, they finished 14th in weighted DVOA amongst a bunch of injuries. This defense still has Maxx Crosby, top 10 borderline defender, depending on who you ask, but a very, very good defender against the run and the rush and rushing the passer. Christian Wilkins, gone. Seems like there's some injury stuff. I don't know. It's curious to me. He's still out there. They let Robert Spillane go. This linebacker room is, it's interesting. I'll put it that way. Maybe Island Misfit Toys might be the best way to put it. So the linebacker room is interesting. But again, Patrick Graham's been like a cover 2 guy. He has Patriots background. Pete Carroll's a cover 3 guy. So that's interesting. So there might be some hybridization in there. But this defense, this Raiders defense, Matt, how good do you think they can be? Anything that's grabbing your attention? Any names grabbing your attention there?
Is this the worst back 7 in football? Like it might be. That's what
not a lot of names.
It's got to be up. Not a lot of names, Well, so, like Jermaine Pratt, maybe people obviously. Jeremy Chin, yeah, he's interesting. But they've got Devin White in this linebacker room. They've converted
Devin
Jamal
White and
Adams.
Jamal Adams are the backup linebackers.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so that's. In the year 2025, that's where we're at. Yeah, Eric Stokes is like ... Yeah, that's where we're at. Eric Stokes, obviously at corner. Of course, they drafted the big ass. Yeah, Porter, the big ass
Porter
dude
from Iowa State. Yeah. Yep. I love that pick, by the way. That's a Pete Carroll dart throw corner all the way. So totally get that draft pick.
So yeah, totally get the draft pick, but I think this is a defense. This defense might need 2 off seasons. Okay, I just think they're that's another thing that leads me into just kind of the weirdness about the Raiders right now is that obviously I think that everybody's selling them run first team. We know what Chip Kelly wants to do. Man, how many run first game scripts is this team going to be in? Especially in their own division. They've got 3 good offenses to compete against. They got 3 good offenses that I think that can just throw the football right over these guys' heads. Linebacker, cornerback, safety, I think is an issue. Pass rush could be, especially if Malcolm Kuntz comes back and is the player that he was a year ago prior to the injury. That's definitely interesting, but I don't know, man. I think this on paper, look, Patrick Graham's a great coach. Pete Carroll obviously is a legendary defensive back elevator. He might make Eric Stokes look like a first-round pick again. You can never really put anything past Pete Carroll. He's got a great resume, but on paper, I feel like this looks like the 32nd or 30th best defense in the NFL.
There's not a lot. There's not a lot of cooking here. You're hoping it's, like I said, 14th last year. It's hard for me to envision it getting to that height, getting that high as far as ranking wise. To me, this screams average at best. Maybe they have some good game plans, against division opponents that they know. You just make it tough. They've played the Chiefs toughs recently. It's just hard. I keep looking and I'm like, I thought they had more interesting names on here. One of those where as I was doing my research, I'm watching preseason, and don't get me wrong, they're playing tough. They're playing smart right now. They have some interesting young D tackles. I like. If I'll throw them that bone. They have this guy Jonah Lialu. I really like a D tackle, but like you said, the back end, it's like, all right, Jeremy Chin is a fun player, but he's a very specific player that has to be used in specific ways. Is this the defense to do that? We'll see. The linebackers, like you just mentioned, Jermaine Pratt got let go, from the Bengals for a reason. It wasn't and they need all the defensive help that you can get, or they can get. Elandon Roberts is kind of just a wash to me, or just kind of I'm indifferent. I'm on Elandon Roberts, but then with backup linebackers is, I guess Jamal Adams gets the Pete Carroll bump, but he's a weird player too, a specific player. They're already blitzing him a ton. I'm like, no, don't do this again. Well, you don't have to appease Jamal Adams to make your defense go. Stop it. But maybe he's just a rotational package player for them. Okay, so they're gonna this team is just gonna be funky. They're gonna catch some people because again, they have a quarterback. I know we're talking about the defense. They have competent coordinators. I really do think that. And Pete Carroll gets the most out of his guys. He has proven that he does. So, but I don't think this is put together where it's wow, this team really, we're sleeping on them. They might, oh my God, look at this. They can really sneak up. It's more just they're going to be frisky, interesting, but I'm not saying good. And that's how I feel about both of their units, but especially the defense, because that was my first thought too. It was all right, Maxx, Crosby, and Jeremy Chin. As I'm looking through the rest of their roster, they make the most of it, but we'll see kind of how far that can get them. It's a tough division, tough conference. You don't really get a lot of breaks to hide. All right, breakout player. Also an interesting segment for this team. Who was your breakout player for the Las Vegas Raiders, Matt?
Yeah, you and I were talking before the show that this was a tough division to pick breakout players on because it's a lot of older established teams. There's not a ton, and I got kind of always, I don't like to take rookies in this, and there are definitely interesting rookies on all four of these teams, including the Raiders. Of course, we just talked about a bunch of them on offense. I went with, I think we actually have the same one because I can see yours on the dock. I went with Michael Mayer. I think that Michael Mayer is going to play a ton. I think this team in Chicago are going to be the ones that compete to lead the NFL in 12 personnel this year. I think they could push up to 40%. Mayer, I get it, right? He's a tight end. These guys sometimes take time. He also had a personal situation last year that kept him away from the team, of course, but he's been locked in. I think that this team is going to run a ton of 12 personnel, and he'll probably be the inline guy. I don't know what his production is going to look like, but I do think from a real life standpoint, he's going to be more the inline guy, gets after it in the run game. And, this position takes time to develop in the NFL. And I think right now he looks like a guy who could be a fringe star. I think he moves really well I've always thought he moved really well for his size. Not like a breathtaking athlete like in the Brock Bowers or George Kittle mode, I guess, but definitely somebody that I think can move really well for the position and is a mismatch against linebackers and safeties.
Yeah, almost he could end up being like Jake Ferguson plus, like Jake Ferguson-ish, where he's like a pretty good blocker, could play in line as a pretty good receiver with strong hands. Not the fastest guy or anything like that. Michael Mayer is my breakout player too, like you mentioned. I hinted at this. I was high on him as a prospect. I was high on a lot of tight ends in that class. But with him, what I thought was, okay, I think he can at least be an above average blocker, and then just be a good, strong receiver. Might not cap out as a catching 10 touchdowns and 1,000 yards, like you said, the true freaks at the position. But I just thought he had a good skill set. And then when I watched this preseason, he's getting open. He's blocking really well as well. And then also when he is throwing the football, he's just snagging that thing. He made a nice diving catch with Geno in one preseason game. He had another one where Geno was scrambling around. He went up and dunked it, went up and snatched it out of the air. I mean, now this room also has Ian Thomas. So it's just a interesting tight end room, a very good tight end room with a bunch of different skill sets. Like, you're not going to ask Bowers to block a bunch of guys, but you get Scrap. But then you got Mayer, and then you got Thomas too. Like, they might just go 3 tight ends just based out of that, because we got a second receiver in Bowers anyways. But Mayer, I think, is going to be like you said, the stats might not all be there, but real football terms, he's going to be kind of a keystone player, I think, for this offense, where he allows them to do a lot of things to kind of let their funkiness go. With their 2 best players being a tight end and a running back, and so we'll see how they make that work. But Mayer is going to really help that out. Nice. I know. I was looking through this roster. I was kind of like, couldn't really come up with another name that I was like really want to stand on. Yeah. All right. Over under win total. It's at 6.5 for the Raiders. What are you going with, Matt?
I'm going under here. I think they could be all the things that you described as like a plucky, interesting, competitive team and still win 5 or 6 games. It's just not a very talented roster. I think the running back and the tight end are really good. Obviously, Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, and then I think they've got a lot of role players at wide receiver and maybe kind of a league average offensive line and maybe like a slightly above league average quarterback. Depending on, I know there's some real hardcore Geno fans among our friends and in the media and stuff like that. But yeah, I think like above league average quarterback in Geno Smith. So they won't be embarrassing. I don't think they'll be embarrassing. And Nate, I think that the like tenor around this team is, Pete Carroll is an older guy. He's not there to like rebuild, or he's there to compete right now. And I think he is there to compete right now. And I think they will be competitive. But Pete Carroll also, like, that guy probably thinks he's 55. He doesn't think like, oh, I'm however old, I'm 70 plus and I'm going to retire in 3 years. That's like the tone around. I feel like it's built in this narrative that the Raiders are not a rebuilding team. But then you look at the roster and how many holes they have. And honestly, the way they've behaved this year as well, besides taking like a running back 6 overall, they've made a lot. And the Geno trade, they've made a lot of rebuilding. Like, we're resetting the culture, resetting the roster moves. They haven't made a lot of big extensions into the future necessarily. They've done a lot of, they're not committing to Jakobi Meyers like multiple years. I think this is a rebuilding team. So successful season and they win 5-6 games. And I think that's fine. They just need to get more talented.
Yeah. I agree that I think 2026 is where they're more like, ooh, that's the sneaky, maybe wild card team. And Pete's only on a 3-year deal. I will say that. I'm going to go over 6.5, but I'm with you that I think it's 7 wins is the cap, the ceiling of it. I just think they do get there. Their schedule is wonky, where they play a bunch of tough teams, but they also get a couple easy outs near the end. Actually, not near the end. They go Broncos, Eagles, Texans. Then they go Giants, Chiefs, and hopefully the Chiefs are sitting somebody. So, but I'm with you that I think as I've looked on the roster and looked at all this, the depth. Look at who the needle movers are. As much as I respect Chip Kelly, Patrick Graham, Pete Carroll, Maxx Crosby, and Geno Smith, and Brock Bowers, like, not enough for the rest of the roster to overcome all the holes that they have. So they might be well coached. They might do some interesting things. I think it's more of a 6-7 win team. I'm going to go over just because I'll just want to shine that optimism before the season about where this is potentially going.